My name is Hannah O'Gallagher and I'm a peer support volunteer with Soft UK. I've been here now for about 9 or 10 months. I found Soft after I lost my son Killian to Trisomy 13, and I just found the support, the help and the encouragement, everything from Soft was just absolutely incredible. And I decided to volunteer here because it's so meaningful and such a massive thing for me to get to help other people who are going through the same thing, but it also gives my son a real lasting legacy, and that's just really very important. Now, with that being said, I am really excited to introduce to you this next session, and this is the TRIS Project Insights with Dr. Deborah Bruns. Thank you.
My name is Debbie Bruns, and I want to welcome you to an overview of the Tracking Rare Incident Syndromes project, known as TRIS. I want to take about 30 minutes to walk you through the project, how it began, the different components, current and future plans, and so on. I am working this morning with 2 laptops, so if you see me look away, it is not ignoring you. It is looking at my notes on my other laptop. There's also a PowerPoint that has many of the pieces of information that I'm going to share, and I wanted to make sure that I catch everything. First of all, thank you to Soft UK for including me in your family conference. Hopefully I will be able to be there in person for the next one and get to meet you. I've met quite a few families from the UK through Facebook, a few families that have come over here to the US for our annual Soft conference and so on. So quick hellos to Heidi and Demi and some of the other folks that I've met. First thing for me, just to give you some background, I am a full professor at Southern Illinois University. And just as a point of reference, we are in the Shawnee National Forest. There is a forest outside my door, deer in my backyard, wild turkeys, all kinds of animals. We are about 6 hours south of Chicago. So nowhere near Chicago at all. We are just about 3 hours from Nashville, about 4 hours from Memphis, if those names mean anything. Those are in Tennessee. We're very close to Missouri and Kentucky as well. So definitely the emphasis is on Southern, not as much on Illinois, but on Southern. I teach in the special education program. My background is focused on working with families and also with young children from birth to 5, which is how I kind of fell into the trisomy world. Way back when I was a classroom teacher in New York City, where I grew up, I had the pleasure to work with 3 little girls, preschool age, that had trisomy 18, and I assume it was full trisomy 18. This was in the early 1990s. 2 of the girls were 3 years old when they were in my classroom, and the third one was 4. And just for context, this was about 1992 or so. Internet was just starting, and I went to try to find information about trisomy 18. I knew all about Down syndrome. I knew about Cri-du-Chat, things like that, but I'd never heard of trisomy 18 or Edwards syndrome. When I was able to get online in the early days of the internet, I saw autopsy photos. That was about it. But then I went to my classroom and there were my girls. And they each definitely had very similar physical features. They had some similar medical issues with respiratory and feeding difficulties and such. But I learned very quickly they were able to learn. First and foremost, again, I come at this as a teacher, as a child development person, and they also have very unique personalities. So I wanted to learn more, and I think that seed was planted. Fast forward, I started my doctoral program in 1995, and right around that time was when the internet was becoming more of a place for families, for parents to meet and share information, and I was very fortunate to stumble onto a listserv of a group called Our Kids, which is an international group of parents and caregivers and interested professionals talking about children and adults with disabilities. And as luck would have it, there was a mom participating in Our Kids from Australia. As some of you may have heard of Karen. She has a son, Alex, who has trisomy 18 mosaic. He is in his mid-20s now. And she led the charge. She had a listserv where there was a discussion about family-related issues. There was a listserv for medical issues. There was a listserv for parents of angels. And she warmly welcomed me to this rare trisomy world. And that's where I've met people like Heidi and Demi way back when, and heard about their stories and wanted to learn more and wanted to do something. So really and truly, the TRIS project grew out of my classroom experience, my listserv experience, again, with parents talking about the same frustrations with not getting the care their children needed, with medical professionals being totally unaware of conditions and whether it was trisomy 18, 13, or other rare conditions. So the TRIS project really started from all of that. The project officially began in 2007 with an online presence with a website and online surveys that parents could access once they were enrolled in the project. So the project continues to focus on outreach, awareness, and dissemination of information. The main way that it's done is through the TRIS project surveys. And again, I'm sure at least some of you listening to my talk are part of the project. So thank you for enrolling and continuing to be involved. We start out with what I call the full survey or the baseline survey. So regardless of how old your child is, you can begin your participation at any time, whether your child's an infant, a teenager, or what have you. And this baseline survey collects information about pregnancy and delivery, care that was provided right after birth, family concerns, family support, developmental information, which again owes to my background as a developmental person, an early childhood person, and not as a medical person. But this baseline survey also includes a great deal of items around medical needs, specifically what types of cardiac defects your child may have, respiratory issues, medications, side effects, vision and hearing questions. And one thing that is important is because it's a survey, everyone has to answer the same questions. So over the years, I've realized I've missed things. I may have needed to go into more detail on certain items because, again, I come at this as a developmental and educational person and not a medical person, but I cannot change the survey because everyone has to take the same one. So there have been kind of spin-off surveys that have happened to go into detail on specific topics. And I always encourage parents, if they have questions, to ask. And then if I can pull information from the surveys, or again, I've created kind of these spin-off surveys to capture additional information. Once you complete the baseline, as long as the child continues living, there's an annual follow-up survey. It is a condensed version of the baseline to get updates on new operations, new medications, changes if the child is attending school, changes in therapies, changes in families, a new baby, remarriage, different types of things. So again, what makes the project unique is this longitudinal view. Typically, if you read the research articles, it's information pulled from a hospital over a 5-year period that counts the number of kids that had heart surgery. That's important, there's no question. And that has definitely pushed awareness forward and pushed a willingness to provide interventions like heart surgery forward. But what's unique for the project is being able to take that long range view. And one of the things that has come out of this is if you go on the website, and there are case studies. Again, at this point, they're a little bit dated, but we started out with 12 case studies, one for each month, probably about 6-7 years ago. And we were again highlighting the long-term survivors. So we hear so much about incompatible with life. Well, again, maybe there's a bias for parents that join the project, but there's many, many long-term survivors in the TRIS project, and that's across trisomy 1813 and other rare syndromes as well. So we have the 12 case studies, and a few years ago we updated 4 of the case studies, again, to show even longer longitudinal view of the children, and that's why the follow-up surveys are critically important. For infants that live 60 days or less, or are stillborn, miscarried, and so on, there's also a modified survey. So that's a shorter one-shot survey. You come in, you complete it, you're done with the project. And there's been a very positive response to that in terms of people completing it. And I'll go into a little bit more about how the results are shared and so on, but just in terms of a general numbers, because it changes literally about every day for survey results, is at this point for the folks that are enrolled in the project for the full survey, for that baseline survey, about 60% have completed it. And when you look at survey research, usually the number that people look at as a positive kind of the minimum percentage for survey data to really be meaningful is 40%. So having a 60% return rate is amazing. And for the modified, it's almost a 90% return rate. So that is just phenomenal. And I thank all of you out there who have completed one or the other, or again, if you're interested, there will be information about how to enroll. For the follow-up survey, again, it's each year. So since the project began in 2007, those folks who had a baseline survey, there is literally one person who has completed their child, well, they're adults, now adult, year 13 follow-up survey. And just for numbers, we have about 400 year 1 follow-up surveys completed, about 115 year 5, and about 25 year 10. So again, this whole notion of incompatible with life is kind of blown out of the water with numbers like that. I'll go into a little bit more about the types of questions that I receive and that we receive at the project that come from parents and students and professionals asking for information. And that's a wonderful way to spread awareness about the project. Facebook is an avenue as well. We did have a TRIS Facebook page, but when Facebook redid their formatting and such, it kind of got lost in the shuffle, and I have not been able to access it for a while. We did have about 1,500 followers, so it's a time issue right now to try to get the page going again, but it is something on the list for a TRIS project. We do have a dedicated email address, which is TRIS, TRIS, @siu.edu. And we have a manager of sorts who's been taking on looking at emails that come through on that address and updating the database with our enrollments. Her name is Shirley Lockwood, and she lives in California. Shirley had a daughter with a very rare genetic syndrome that affected the 6th chromosome. And Shirley was again someone I met in the early days of the listservs and has been part of the project since even before I had thought of the project, and just in having conversations about raising awareness and such. So if you are involved with TRIS and you get your annual follow-up email, it's coming from Shirley. And then if you are a new enrollee, she would be the one who will send you your individualized login and password that only you have access to for your time in the project. So again, when you see the PowerPoint information that comes with it, the URL for enrollment is there, and you can always reach out to us at tris@siu.edu as well. One of the ways that information is shared is done like this. Again, I've been involved with Soft USA for about 10 years at this point, going to conference, recruiting new members. I always present as well. And now I'm excited to have this relationship with Soft UK. But one of the other areas in terms of raising awareness and sharing information with medical professionals especially is writing up survey results for publication. And that's something that I've done. I've had some wonderful both undergraduate and graduate students working with me on the TRIS project since we've started in 2007. So there's been a number, probably around a dozen or so articles at this point. Many of our articles have been published in the American Journal of Medical Genetics, and that is considered a premier journal in the area of genetics. Dr. John Carey is probably a familiar name to many of you. He is the medical advisor and also one of the founders of Soft USA. And he has been involved with that particular journal for many, many years and has definitely mentored me and supported me in having TRIS project data included in that journal. And I think what's really important is the data, but I also, with his encouragement, always include photos of some of the children in the articles, because again, my initial exposure to autopsy photos just wasn't right to me, especially because again, I went back to my classroom and there were my vibrant little girls that were smiling and making sounds and being mischievous. So Dr. Carey has been very helpful to me over the years in being able to provide color photographs, and that's something the TRIS project does. That we have a consent form, release form for photos. So you'll see our website has photos, publications have photos, presentations have photos, the case studies have tons of photos in them, because again, part of the project is to show that the children are compatible with life and are thriving. But going back to the articles, there have been articles about cardiac surgery. There's been articles about developmental information about children, small groups of children with trisomy 18 and 13 over the years. There's also been, I've tried to separate out, so an article on what I would call long-term survivors, which is over 12 months. For trisomy 18, trisomy 13, and all of it is dependent on kind of where the project is at that point. So you may see small numbers in an article, but it would just mean that it was earlier on in the project. The past few years, I've been able to focus a little more on interacting with parents and professionals through Facebook and email and disseminating results, but I'm hoping to get back to having more time for writing and being able to get out into these journals some more. There's also been some really interesting collaborations that have happened through the project. Some of you may be familiar. There is a person in Italy. Her name is Martina Biaggi, and she has a family member with a trisomy 9 mosaicism, a different rare genetic condition. She is involved in the film industry, and she began with a project with her own family, and it grew to meeting other families that had a member with trisomy 9 mosaicism in Italy. And she found me using doing some Google searching. She came up with one of the TRIS project articles that focused on T9 mosaicism. And we had about a year-long email and Skype relationship. And the last time that we had a face-to-face conference in 2019, she was able to come out to the US. And she came out here to Southern Illinois, and we had a road trip to Michigan, which is about 9 hours away. And she was able to meet the families there and broadened her scope, not only for trisomy 9 mosaicism, but she was there filming at the conference. And it is a documentary. It's called Isono, I Am. And it has been accepted at a number of European film festivals this year, which has been really, really exciting. And again, just raising awareness. There's some little bits with me in her documentary, but again, she was really there focusing on the children and their families and sharing information. And it's just a wonderful connection that we were able to make, and hopefully we will continue to talk about Isono, have more people see the movie, and so on. Recently, I also connected with a mom here. She's in Alabama, which is way south in the US. Her name is Sarita Edwards. She has a son with trisomy 18, And she and her husband started a foundation on behalf of folks with not only rare trisomies, but families that find themselves in medical situations with their children. And it's called the EWE Foundation. And there are a number of projects that they're working on that support parents. So financially, resource-wise, programs that are based right now more in the southern US areas, since they're based in Alabama, but they have outreach, they work on advocacy. So they recently had an advocacy conference that I was part of, and I am a part of their advisory board moving forward. So that's been really exciting. Collaborating with Soft USA is something that TRIS Project has been doing for over 10 years. As I said, Soft has supported recruitment efforts for the project, has supported some financial efforts for the project. We were able to buy some medical textbooks. We were able to get some materials for the students who work with the project. So that's been wonderful. And definitely feeling, for me, since I don't have a child with a rare trisomy, but feeling part of the Soft USA family has been wonderful. And then I'm also part of their medical and scientific advisory board. Soft UK, excited to connect with all of you, to be part of this organization. I've come on as a professional advisor, so that's really exciting for me. I help out with the research page and just, again, reaching out to families. So I hope all of you, if you are not already part of the TRIS project, will consider enrolling. The reach of the project is actually worldwide. And we have folks from all over, again, US, USA, UK, Canada, Thailand, Netherlands, Norway. There's just people from all over. The main criterion is being able to read English, because all of the surveys are in English only. There's been plans to try to at least translate into maybe one or two other languages, but it runs into some difficulties with all of the medical jargon to find someone who can do the translation. So all of the information is readily understandable, and then also understand the medical component of it. So that's something on our to-do list. There's a hope to kind of figure out making connections to, potentially have a Spanish translation or an Italian translation. But that's kind of in the works. But again, I wanted to stress that the project is definitely worldwide, and that's pretty exciting. But again, the collaboration with Soft UK is wonderful. And I'm very excited to see where that will go. Again, just a little bit about parents and students and professionals reaching out to the TRIS project from all over. Many different types of questions. There are medically focused questions. There's developmental type questions. Will my child walk? Will my child be able to dress themselves? And, again, for me, coming at this from a developmental perspective, walking doesn't mean you just have to walk on 2 feet. If a child uses a gait trainer to get from point A to point B, that is walking, that is ambulating, that is purposeful movement from one place to another. So there's many questions that come across for that. Things like support needs, whether for the family, looking at availability of summer programs, parents asking about therapies that maybe they're not aware of. So I've had conversations on email and on the phone with parents talking about music therapy and hippotherapy and aquatic therapy and things that you don't necessarily think of when we think more about speech language services or occupational therapy. But there are many options out there, and to raise awareness for a parent or for a school social worker that reaches out. That's, again, that many more people that are aware of these types of services and the importance of at least exposing a child with trisomy 13 or 18 to these types of services and seeing the outcomes from that. So I've had, just as an example on kind of the, for parents is, I've had parents, I've had grandparents, I've had guardians and caregivers reach out. I've had siblings who are preparing a report for school on trisomy 18, reach out, and that's been both high school and university level siblings. On the medical side, I've had nursing students reach out. I've had genetic counselors reach out. I've had pediatricians reach out, because again, even though we all know about trisomy 18 and 13, there are so many people out there that when a child comes onto their caseload, it's the first one, and they really don't know where to look, or they're finding information. There's some wonderful places online with information, TRIS Project and Soft UK, Soft USA, Unique, and NORD, which is a more US-based group. But there's also outdated information, and sometimes if people are looking into the research, they're finding the older work, things from 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago that had a case study of a child that passed away as an infant, or some research that's out there that is against heart surgery, that is against providing resuscitation at birth. So I think it's important that when people find their way to the TRIS Project with these types of questions, I provide resources from the TRIS Project, but then I also will go into the research. So if it's a medical professional, especially, I'll go into the research and send them back studies that have more positive outcomes. There's a great deal of work that's come out of Japan, for example, about providing aggressive interventions and long-term outcomes for children with trisomy 18, largely 18, not very much on 13. So sometimes for a medical person, I'll share some of those articles. Also for parents, I do share the TRIS Project articles, and always ask if they have questions to come back to me. And they often do. And they often share what I've sent them, the articles and materials like the case studies, and there's information modules on the TRIS website as well. So parents will look at those materials and then also share it with individuals on their child's team. So whether it's medical professionals or a special education teacher, that always tickles me when a special ed teacher has my materials, because that's what I was. So there's just different groups, and the non-medical folks are often, as I said, a school social worker, a school counselor, some type of case manager that is involved in the child's care, and kind of that overview of coordinating care. I will often, again, if a parent has a unique question, I will go into the database and find information and then kind of package it for them. So I've had parents ask about seizure meds, the success of different seizure meds. I've had them ask about dental issues, because again, many dentists, even specialized dentists who work with children and adults with disabilities, may not have seen a child with trisomy 18 who's tube fed and has some issues going on in their mouth. So there have been some interesting questions that I've been really happy to be able to go into the TRIS survey, since it is so comprehensive, and pull information out. So I can go into it for trisomy 18 mosaic, for a certain issue with children in a certain age range. I mean, I can drill it down to that amount of detail. Again, just to kind of finish all of this up, I've been very fortunate to come into this rare trisomy world, meeting families, meeting professionals like Dr. Carey, Dr. McCaffrey, a whole group of folks that are very committed to supporting and assisting children with rare syndromes, to really flourish and grow and develop, and to really change the perspective and see them as very compatible with life. I don't think our work is done. I think there's still a great deal of work to do, but in the time from first having contact with children in the early 90s, and then getting on the listservs and seeing where we are now from when the project started, I'm positive. I do see things going in a really positive direction. Not necessarily everywhere. I know even in pockets of the US, it doesn't always go very smoothly. And I know in the UK there are issues, but I see things moving forward for our children, and I'm very happy that I can be part of that. Thank you very much.